Georgia. Forward US is a bipartisan policy group started by leaders in the tech industry, and we work primarily around federal immigration policy and advocacy. And here in the state of Georgia, we are part of a larger grassroots advocacy coalition with some of our wonderful partner organizations who you'll hear from here today. And the reason we've called this press conference here today is to stand in solidarity with the 24,000 dreamers across the state of Georgia who are contributing to our state, contributing to our country, and really are looking for a bipartisan congressional solution that will allow them to continue to prosper here in the state. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, a true champion of immigrants here under the Golden Dome, Representative Mr. Pedro Marin.
Good morning and welcome to the state capitol. Today I rise because this is an important subject that we're going through, and again, as a 16-year member for the House of Representatives, I have been always in the forefront of defending our immigrant community. I think as Americans get polled, we get a majority of Americans saying that they support the deferred action for children, and we need Congress to act now in making sure that the 24,000 young men and women in Georgia and hundreds of thousands across the United States are protected. So again, we liked what we're seeing in the bill in Congress, but we need to make sure that that doesn't get sidetracked, that doesn't get diluted. We need to make sure that those young men and women, as I say, contribute. I know many employers that hire as employees DACA recipients. And so, again, we like to see that we can protect those children in Georgia and across the United States. So, Congress, that's our message about me this morning, to make sure that what is and sad that it was sidetracked a couple days ago. But again, we need to focus on making sure this coalition is going throughout the whole entire country to make sure that we send a voice and we send a message that we support the DREAM Act. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here and for everybody listening. My name's Xavier Velasquez. I'm 22 years old. I'm a Georgian, a proud Georgian. I'm an entrepreneur, and I happen to be a dreamer. It really hasn't been an easy past few weeks for those under the program formerly known as DACA. I find myself searching every day for the latest updates, articles, and press releases about the future of those now left in limbo, and the future of theirs that is presently under mercy and the compassion of men and women, strangers to them, unaware of their stories. We're talking about individuals studying to become doctors, lawyers, and some of my closest friends who are software engineers, entrepreneurs, and loyal servers of their local communities. For my personal reality, as a DACA recipient and as a business owner that employs U.S. citizens, I pay thousands of dollars in business taxes every single year. And since I graduated high school, I have never been able to receive financial aid, any public scholarships, hope. On top of that, I have to pay out-of-state tuition and sometimes international tuition. So it's been extremely, extremely difficult for any DACA recipient in the state of Georgia. I'm a firm believer in the rule of law, and I do believe in border security. And I believe we need to find a humanitarian way to deter the unsafe practice of undocumented immigration that claims countless lives every single year. Despite this pulling the carpet from 850,000 people who are American in every definition of the word really makes sense. Also, is this not going against the principles of free enterprise, paying taxes, and creating jobs for U.S. citizens? So I urge my fellow Republicans to give this a very hard thought with your heart and with the American principles that you and I believe in, so that we can quickly pass a solution before January 19th that will improve the lives of thousands of Americans and make ripples across our country's economy. Thank you.
Good morning/afternoon. My name is Aisha Yaqub, and I'm the Policy Director with Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta. We are the first and only legal and advocacy center dedicated to protecting the rights of Native Hawaiians, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders in the Southeast. Today, there are nearly 1.5 million Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders living in the shadows. Nearly 169,000 of them are immediately eligible for DACA. I stand here today to remind my community and remind the rest of the United States that this issue is not just relegated to one ethnic group. A significant number of DACA recipients that we know and are across the country are Korean, Chinese, Indian, and Filipino. We may not talk about it, but this is an issue that affects so many of our own people. For the last few months, our organization, as well as our partners that stand with us today, have been asking Congress to pass a Clean Dream Act, a solution for our undocumented brothers and sisters that does not put our other communities at harm. We have met with our members in Congress here at home, and we have sent thousands and countless phone calls and postcards to our members to ask them to pass this Clean Dream Act. To our senators, Johnny Isakson and David Perdue, as well as our representatives in the House, we are asking you to pass a Clean Dream Act this month in January. Each day that the bill is delayed, over 1,200 DACA recipients are losing their status and are put at risk for losing their jobs, their homes, and their livelihoods right here in the United States, and especially here in Georgia. We cannot let them keep waiting for another day. For the members of our Asian American community that are fighting with us, please don't give up. We are fighting for a Clean Dream Act in January, and we will continue fighting for a Clean Dream Act after January if it does not come. We will stand with you no matter what, and we will continue to fight for you because we believe that this is what we need as a community, and this is what all of our community partners are here with us to fight for. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Maria Palacios. I'm a policy analyst and leadership program coordinator with GALEO, the Georgia Association of Latino Elected Officials. I want to thank everyone for coming out to this press conference, for our dreamers, for our coalition partners, for the community that is watching us through these different mediums. And I want to say that GALEO has two important points that we should not forget as Georgians today. The first point is the contribution of dreamers to our state and to our country. The Migrant Policy Institute released last year a research on the different occupations that DACA recipients are in. Compared to unauthorized youth, DACA recipients are more in service industries and help with occupational mobility in the country. Of these services, those include hospitality, health, and social services that, according to the Georgia Trend magazine in Georgia, are all areas that are not only increasing, but we have higher demand. Why do I say this? Because when we are looking at favorable policy, when we are looking at different political gains, we shouldn't just think about what is popular in rhetoric or what is maybe something that in the past has worked. We need to remember that removing 24,000 DACA recipients from our state has huge impacts on our economy and on the livelihood of all of us, whether we are directly impacted with them or not. On the second note that GALEO wants to remind members is of the growing Latino electoral vote. In Georgia, we had 6% above national averages in get-out-to-vote efforts for the 2016 elections. This was a 33% increase from the previous presidential election. The Latino vote is growing strong in numbers, and Latinos care about the immigration policies that affect not only us, but our family members, our loved ones, and the friends that we have. Because of this, I want to remind all of you, all of our elected officials who are listening, who may hear this message, that the Georgia Latino vote cares about DACA recipients and needs immediate action, especially for those legislators who are worried about the upcoming elections. We thank you all for coming and remind you that DACA recipients are one of us and are here for all of us. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Catherine Narvaez, and I am the Vice President of Los Vecinos de Buford Highway, or the neighbors of Buford Highway. We're a community organization that's mission is to cultivate community, magnify the voices of community members, and to grow and nurture future leaders to preserve the distinct quality of Buford Highway. We serve residents who live in apartments by sharing a meal together and discussing issues pertinent to the community. At these meals, we share important information, immigration updates, and information about the school systems. We're here today to talk about DACA because it's such a huge problem in this community. Recently, the courts have stated that there could be an irreparable harm if DACA is not reinstated, and members of our community would live in that harm. A lot of our community members are business leaders, have bought their first homes, have bought their first cars. And taking DACA away and not passing the DREAM Act would enable these people to go back to the shadows. As a first-generation immigrant, I was one of the 6%. I was one member of the 6% of people that opened their first business. DACA enabled my family to pull ourselves out of poverty and open up our own business. We bought our first house. We bought our first car. Not passing DACA means that, or not passing the DREAM Act means that we will live in uncertainty, knowing what will happen, not knowing what will happen to our businesses, to our home, or even paying off our cars. It is important that that Congress passes a DREAM Act by January 19th, so that we can continue living the lives that we have cultivated in the past 5 years. We don't want to close down our businesses. We don't want to stop contributing to the American economy. 122 DACA recipients lose their status, which means the 122 businesses have to let go of a person that they've trained, that they've invested in. That means that we are not contributing to the economy and that we are going to have to go back into the shadows. We are an economic powerhouse. But also, let's not forget that we're also family members, that we're your church members. We go to church with you. We play in your soccer teams. We work alongside of you. We go to your schools, and all we want is to better ourselves. We are an economic powerhouse, but we're also people. Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Shea from the Latin American Association of Atlanta. Our mission is to empower Latinos to adapt, integrate, and thrive. And for half a century, that's what we have been doing. In our youth programs, as well as in our family services and our legal immigration services programs, we have served hundreds of DACA students. So I'm not here to make the economic case. I think that case has been made. I even think the moral case has been made. I'm here to make the compassion case and to ask ourselves, who are we as a people? Who are we as Georgians? In the Deep South, we've been known for generations as a hospitable people, people who do the right thing when the chips are down. People who do the right thing when it's not easy to do so. People who do the right thing in spite of the rhetoric that we hear, because we recognize humanity for what it is. We value people where they are, and we care about them, even when it's hard to do so. So of the hundreds of students we have met who have dreams, who want to go to higher education, who are Georgian and U.S. people in every sense of the word, they are American in every sense of the word, except for a piece of paper. Let's fix this legal mistake. Let's fix this incongruence in our law and the incongruence in our moral fiber. So I'm actually asking the state of Georgia to think about who it is and who do we want to be. What is the story we want to tell our children a generation from now? We have a short window of time to do the right thing. And in fact, we've got a very rapidly closing window. We think there's a key moment coming up at the federal level on the 19th of January. It's a place where we could stand up and do the right thing. What is the story we want to tell our grandchildren? That we had an opportunity on our hands and we let it slip away? Or we took a stand for people who needed our help because it was the right thing to do, consistent with who we are as Georgians, as Southerners, and as Americans. So at the LAA, we've been doing this for half a century. We will continue empowering Latinos to adapt, integrate, and thrive. We will especially continue to do that for our young people. But I think that is actually the mission of the entire state. We are now almost 1 million strong, almost 10%. And if you look at the Latino population, it is very young. If you look at those in DACA, it is very young. These are the people that are going to lead us into the future if we let them. Let's do the right thing here. Thank you.
My name is Tom Haygood. I'm a pastor at Columbia Presbyterian Church in Decatur. And I'm going to come at this from an entirely different perspective, from my own faith perspective of this issue. Someone once wrote that the Bible is the ultimate immigration handbook. And if you think about it, that's right on the mark. Throughout the Bible, you will witness story after story from Genesis to Revelation, all marked by the movement of people from one place to the other. You see, we too are a country built by immigrants, most of them undocumented immigrants. Some are DACA recipients who came here a long, long time ago. So sometimes I do wonder, like David, why we even call ourselves Christians when we treat our neighbors no better than the Egyptians treated the Hebrew slaves. Love your neighbor as yourself? Sure, as long as they look like us, speak like us, and worship like us. So when a stranger walks into your life, an undocumented immigrant, a DACA recipient, do you even consider those words that Christ spoke? Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. I'd like to share a familiar parable with you. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" Jesus replied. "How do you read it?" And he answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But the lawyer wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "There was once a man walking alone along Beaufort Highway. He was lost. Somehow he got on the wrong bus from Decatur and found himself in a strange area of town. Tragically, he was beaten up and robbed and left on the side of the road. Cars kept driving past him. No one wanted to stop and help. A pastor was in one of the cars, but he was in a hurry and he just assumed the man was drunk. Surely he would sleep it off. A church deacon came by in another car, but his to-do list was so very long, and quite frankly, he didn't want to get involved. But an immigrant, an undocumented immigrant, stopped by and helped the man to his feet. And even though he didn't speak English well, he helped the man into his car and drove him to a clinic where the man was given first aid. And then this immigrant even offered to drive him home, which he did. Jesus asked, "Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robber?" The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." Honestly, I do not believe immigrants are the root causes of the problems that we face in this country of ours. Not at all. And just maybe if we pray about it, we might begin to realize that immigrants, and particularly DACA recipients, are actually part of the solution to many of the problems that we do face in this country. In the parable of the Good Samaritan, we are the ones who are lying in the gutter. We are the ones who are hurt, who live in fear, who live behind closed doors, locks, and build walls. And the Samaritan, the immigrant, comes into our lives not trying to harm us, not trying to steal from us, but reaching out to us with the eyes of hope filled with the love and grace of my Savior. We just have to stop and look into those eyes, and we will see the face of Christ standing before us. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Santiago Marcos. I'm the president and CEO of the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I'm here representing 950 members, over 34 years of service in the state of Georgia. And I'm an immigrant. I'm a Georgian, and I'm an American, and I'm proud of all of those things. I'm going to share with you two quick stories. One is, and they're both true stories. One is about a construction company that is about $25 million in revenue, and is growing. It's booming. This company has no problems finding projects or work. Their issue is finding skilled labor, talent to do the jobs that need to be done. This company is so desperate to find the labor and the talent that they're willing to put young people through college. They're willing to pay for their training. They're willing to help these people. They're willing to help these young people grow into careers that could sustain them for a lifetime, be a generational change, a transformation for their families. But they can't find the folks to do the work. work is going undone. There was an article that was published not long ago, and my friend Charles Cook here put it on his Facebook, and I spread it across on Forbes magazine and on Fox TV, because the work, we need people to work, and we can't find people to do it. The second story is a human story, because I'm a human being as well, as we all are. And it's about a young man who came when he was 3 months old to this country, was brought to this country. He's a DACA recipient. And this young man has a Southern accent. He looks more Hispanic than I do. He proudly wears a little pin on his lapel, the state of Georgia, and he considers himself a Georgian. And I just can't imagine where we're going to send this young man back to. Where does he go? This is his country. That young man works for us. He works for our chamber. And so I take this very personal. It's very personal to me and to our members. And we are here to stand with all of the DACA recipients. There's so much work to be done. There's so many opportunities. And we need these folks. We need these young people in our economies and in our society. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Owings. I am an immigration attorney in Atlanta, Georgia, the immediate past chair of the Georgia-Alabama chapter of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, and a current elected director on the national board for AILA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association. I think we've heard about the compassionate response. We've heard about the moral response. We've heard about the economic response. I also want to talk to you about the sort of intelligent administration of policy response. In this situation, we are facing the possibility of the deportation of over 800,000 extra people. Our immigration system is already so overburdened. We have a wait of several years to complete a case in the immigration court here in Atlanta. Over, I believe, 16,000 cases are currently pending. To add to that will be catastrophic, completely catastrophic for our system. And I think that bears out in what is being said by the DHS secretaries. Former DHS secretaries Chertoff, Napolitano, and Johnson all recently wrote a bipartisan letter saying that Congress needs to pass a bill by January 19th to provide enough time for USCIS, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, to process the application before tens of thousands of DACA recipients are negatively impacted by the loss of their work authorization or removal from the United States. It's the sensible thing to do. It's the right thing to do. These are people in our communities every day. They are part of the ecosystem here. It would be essentially the same as trying to remove 800,000 trees from a forest. We can't do that. It will be catastrophic for the United States. So for that reason, we ask that you respectfully pass a Clean Dream Act and don't stand in the way of this dream.
My name is Charles Cook. I'm a business owner. I employ 7 DACA recipients. I'm a law professor at Emory, and I'm an immigration lawyer. I've argued in the courts of this state for the rights of DACA students to pay in-state tuition, and yet today they cannot. They've been here their entire lives, and yet they cannot access the education system that they have been paying for their entire lives. And particularly since they got DACA 5 years ago, and you can acknowledge the taxes they were actually paying, you would see they have put far more into the system than they have certainly got out of it. These young men and young women are heroes, and yet they stand at a precipice caused by a president who clearly does not care about them, who wants to shift the blame away from himself to others for what he has caused to happen in the cancellation of DACA. It was noted earlier that every day, 122 DACA recipients lose their status. Beginning March 3rd, 1,000 kids a day will lose their DACA status. 1,000. 98% of these kids go to school or work. Over 20% have bought houses and cars. They have families in the United States. They have become, in every sense of the word, Americans. And yet, our politicians stand in the way. It became plainly obvious last night why. The fear of race has been entered into the legislation. A denial by the President of the United States to move forward on a bipartisan compromise because of his racist tendencies and statements. We call on Senator Isaacson to step forward, denounce the statements of President Trump, and endorse the DREAM Act as negotiated last night by Senators Durbin and Graham and other bipartisan members of their group. There are lots of different versions of the Dream Act. We'd love a clean Dream Act. We understand that politics is about negotiation, but it's not about having your own way. It's not about a wall. It's not about deporting people that are not white. It's not about inviting only Norwegians to the United States. What it's about is America. America is immigration, and immigrants are America. Our politicians, our elected representatives in Congress, in both the Senate and the House, and here in Georgia need to speak out and demand that Congress act on this bill by next Friday. We fear that if we wait any longer, the damage caused to these young men and women, to our society, and to our economy will be far too devastating to sweep under the rug. Act. Pass the DREAM Act now. Thank you.
The ask from our business leaders, from our legal community, from our faith community, and from dreamers themselves. Speaking to our congressional delegation, we need a bipartisan solution, and we need it now. Just this week, Forward US took a great group of dreamers from Georgia to our national capital to speak to our delegation about the need to urgently protect dreamers. We're really happy with how those conversations went, and we look to continue to be a resource for our legislators as they find a solution for this. Thank you all so much for coming, and that wraps up our conference today.